Hello and welcome back to Massalia Tales. On the last episode we saw Eusebios' assault against the Celtic Confederation's fortification north of Massalia. We managed to beat our way inside the enemy fortress, surround them and destroy them. But then a Rieti army came from the east to besiege Massalia itself. We had to wait a while before we could counterattack due to agent actions, but eventually we managed to engage them in a battle, the Pictones army also coming in to help. We had our city garrison coming to help us though, so it was a pretty balanced fight. It was a fight based on grand strategy, where we drew the Rieti army to come and attack our army on the open plains, whilst the Pictones were still setting up their position to defend themselves on a nearby hill. This means that the Rieti were surrounded and destroyed by a force that was twice their size, so that when the Pictones then charged down the hill, they had the entire Massalian army to face. They themselves were probably surrounded and destroyed as well, leading to a complete and total victory. In the aftermath of the battle, it was of the two commanders Gelon who was able to profit the most from the news of the victory. Being stationed in the city, he was well placed to make sure all the major nobles of the assembly heard his version of the battle, the version in which his personal role was rather glorified. The story was backed up by his troops, who were quite willing to boost their own role in the tale as well. Meanwhile, the man who had supplied the strategy that had won the day, Eusebios, remained in his jubilant camp, surely now eyeing the Cisalpanian territories his patron Xenon had once conquered as being his for the taking. So the combined forces of the Rieti and the Pictones have been wiped out. A heroic victory for Eusebios and his forces. Only moderate losses considering the fact we've destroyed both of the enemy armies. Our armies are looking in pretty good health. Overall, a victory that has completely turned around the rather dire fate of Massalia. We even looked like we might be on the edge of losing the campaign previously. But with these two enemy armies wiped out, the situation is now rather safe. There are no more invaders to worry about, at least at the moment. So with these armies defeated, I have to decide what to do with a large number of captives. I decided to enslave them, put them to work, getting some more money into Massalia's economy so we can build our strength even further. Two groups of survivors come away from the battle, the Pictones having the larger group. The Rieti one is really nothing. I think it's just a small group of slingers, so Eusebios is going to wipe them out. He's even going to be backed up by the forces from the city, meaning the balance bar is quite far in our favour, as you can see, and we're able to defeat them with 0 casualties. This is very nice because it's providing experience to Eusebios for pretty much no work. Experience to Gelon as well, in fact. And Eusebios and Gelon level up as a result of that experience, so excellent news. The next decision was whether to attack that Pictones army. It depends if I want to actually head west and get ready to defend Tolosa against a possible Cesatani attack. They declared war on us recently, so I'm expecting an invasion from the south. In the end, I decided I would go and attack the Pictones because I still have plenty of movement points. I can still move back in that direction if I need to. So we wipe out that Pictones force, giving Eusebios even more experience. I'm going to release the captives from this battle as a minor gesture of goodwill, and the Daemons of Polymus level up their military traditions. Excellent news. I can almost attack Genua this turn as well, taking it back from the Sequani, but not quite, so I'm going to stay in my own territory and regenerate some troops. I have taken some losses over those battles, so I'm going to just hang around Massalia and put myself in a stance that increases the regeneration rate of my men to get as many men back ready for the next turn of the campaign. Now I decided to start doing some diplomacy. You can see I managed to get the Diorsi to come into a war with the Sequani for a minor payment. I'm hoping they will somehow distract the Sequani and allow me to focus on the Celtic Confederation and the Rieti for now. They weren't willing to trade, of course. Pretty much no one is willing to trade or even go into non-aggression. But one faction was, the Ardea Ego, into a non-aggression pact with me. So it seems I'm building some pretty good relations with the guys over there on the Illyrian coast. I don't know how useful that's going to be, but perhaps it'll be somewhat critical in the future. Now, the most important piece of diplomacy is that I get a peace treaty with the Cesatani with no terms whatsoever. This is superb news. That threat I was anticipating to come from the south now may not be coming at all. And because the Celtiberian Confederation, who are friendly towards me, have conquered in an arc around me to the north, this leaves me relatively free to focus my attention on my many enemies to the east. And this, of course, means that Eusebios in the next turn now is free to attack Genua. It still has no troops in it. The Sequani did have a stack of forces there, but they sailed off on boats somewhere to the south to an unknown destination, and while they're gone, we're going to take their settlement from them. The balance bar is really far in our favour, so I decided to auto-resolve it. The results of the auto-resolve were pretty disappointing. We were, even on the best possible option for auto-resolve, still forced to take really heavy losses, as you can see. You would think that defeating such a weak enemy who we had completely outnumbered and outclassed would take almost no toll on our troops, but apparently many of our heavy men were lost. Inconvenient, but the fact that we're going into a city means that we'll be regenerating troops really quickly, and pretty much in one turn our force will be back to full strength, so that's okay. The bad news is that after my scorched earth policy, the enemy have completely rebuilt Genua with all of the barbarian buildings. It will cost me a fair bit of money to convert them, but I'll have to do it if I want to get the garrison of Genua up to full strength. Now it's time to check in with Carpos, who I'm trying to send into the Black Sea region to make more contacts, perhaps for trade, but you can see there's an Athenian fleet blocking the way, and we are for some reason at war with the Athenians. So now Carpos is in trouble, he has to run away. That fleet could easily chase him down and destroy him with its superior strength. I wanted to see whether the Athenians would go in for a peace treaty, seeing as they didn't actually have any reason to be at war with us. But no, they really want to be involved in this war. They hate us for no particular reason other than that they are at war with us already. So some circular logic means we can't get peace with them. But I can get some good deals with other guys. The Celtiberians going to trade with me, which is ideal. They have a massive border alongside my border, so trading with them is very useful. It also exposes a lot of the map for us to look at. I also get a good trade deal with the Ardea, who have expanded on their non-aggression pact with us to go into trade, so that's excellent as well, furthering our relationship with them. So on the diplomacy front, things are going really well, and to sweeten the deal, I managed to get non-aggression with the Sestani, further securing my southern border at Tolosa. I'm very happy with that arrangement. They won't trade with me, but at this point I don't even mind. Now the Athenian fleet does chase after Carpos. Bad news, you can see they have a gigantic advantage. I'm going to try and run away from this situation using the retreat option. They of course may just chase me down, so we'll see what happens. My guys run towards the Spartan-held port at Pella. The Athenians appear to have no movement points and aren't able to run after me. Excellent news. Now back close to home, the Celtic Confederation have put together a force to come and attack Genua, with Eusebios' beaten up army defending the city itself. The enemy army doesn't look that powerful, there's only a few units, and considering we have a giant defender's advantage, I would think that we would have the overall advantage in this battle, but the balance bar thinks otherwise, so we're going to head down onto the field and see what we can do.
We've shot to fame overnight, it seems. All of the treaties we've dangled across the Mediterranean have been snapped up at once. News of Gelon's heroics has reached them, no doubt, suddenly making Massalia a force to be feared once again. It seems Gelon is in need of a reward, and on that topic, he has asked a favor of us. He has provided to me, in strict confidence of course, evidence that Councillor Melanthius has been conspiring with the enemy to see himself made king of Provincia should our republic fall. Truly a massive accusation, but the evidence speaks volumes on his guilt. We can use this to get Melanthius off the council and thus gain entry for Gelon. Surely the least he deserves. I'm sure Eusebios will support us too, being Gelon's good friend. What say you all?
So here come those Confederation forces. They have a large number of heavy swordsmen in their ranks, which could be potentially a fairly big threat to our hoplite lines. They also have a lot of their own hoplites coming in as reinforcements who are going to slowly come in. Also some of these heavy swordsmen as well. The heavy swordsmen are the biggest threat. Those hoplites are not really a threat because they can't kill us very much, but we also can't kill them. So in many ways, they're just a distraction. You can see what I'm doing, of course, just bottlenecking these streets, making it so that the enemy can't attack me in the rear, and I can face only a small number of their troops at a time. So I've got these streets that looks like the enemy is coming for, bottlenecked up, and I've got lots of reinforcements behind the lines ready to help out as well. At first they sent in a single unit of heavy swordsmen, perhaps seeking to test my defences. These guys came out way ahead of the rest of the enemy forces and did this awkward javelin throw once they actually engaged in combat. Eusebios himself is just one man back from the front lines and sparring my troops to fight on against the enemy. The enemy of course do have advantage in this melee fight and may even be able to break through, but I have so many light troops behind the line, hitting them with javelins and arrows, but the enemy's strength is going to be sapped pretty rapidly, and the morale is going to be constantly being dampened by the fact they're under missile fire. So we very quickly actually got rid of them, only taking a few losses to our line whilst the melee combat went on. So as they run away, the rest of the enemy's army is now coming in, and perhaps these routers will inform their comrades of what's in store when you go up against the hoplite phalanx. Now most of the enemy's army is currently charging their way into this thin street, which is ideal for me because that's going to absolutely minimize the number of enemies who can attack me at once. I gave them a massive volley of arrows from the guys behind my line, but it does pretty much nothing. These guys are so well protected by their large shields that even huge volleys of arrows that seem to fill the sky do almost nothing against the enemy as they come in. Here comes another one, for example. Tons of arrows hitting this leading regiment, barely does anything at all, perhaps one casualty. But now they're going to engage with my pike phalanx, which is set up at the end of the street to stop them getting through. The phalanx is going to do its job pretty well. We're just going to hold the enemy back. They're not really going to get that many kills on the enemy because the enemy's large shield will just block all of their thrusts. But they are keeping the enemy at bay, keeping them still, whilst all of my javelin men and archers are able to inflict casualties on them. The enemy will slowly be able to break through this phalanx. Their men will slowly filter through, cause my men to switch to swords as they get close, and basically gradually defeat the pike wall. And that defeat is going to be hastened by the fact that the enemy are using missile troops to attack it. This pike phalanx is very weak against missile fire, so the enemy's javelins are going to be cutting holes in the pike phalanx wall, and even a couple of holes is enough for one or two guys to get in really close, cause all of the guys to switch to swords, and begin a sort of chain loss of pikes, where eventually the entire unit will just begin fighting in proper melee with their swords. Luckily, the enemy are also pushing their cavalry in whilst the pikes are still up, so they sacrificed a good number of their cavalry there. A similar situation happening over on the other wider street, where my very thin line of hoplites is resisting an enemy cavalry attack. At the same time, the enemy's massed swordsmen are attacking and inflicting quite heavy casualties on my men actually, but again they're taking constant missile fire, which is reducing their numbers. And I'm going to push in my own swordsmen to help out. These swordsmen are already quite depleted from previous battles, but they should do quite well against the tired enemy swordsmen. So now we are a tiny bit later, my pike phalanx has gone. I'm still raining arrows down on the enemy where they're bottlenecked up in this tiny street. I've also pushed my swordsmen in just to keep the enemy in position whilst these arrows come down. I think the pike phalanx is still in there somewhere, but just fighting with its swords now. I've also got light troops up just to increase the weight of my line and try and push them back. Meanwhile, at the other end of the street, I've now got heavy forces round behind the enemy, ready to start some raiding activities. I'm going to split these guys up to attack both of the main enemy groups in the rear, but sending the heavier detachment of 2 hoplite regiments to rush in and attack the back of the enemies clumped up in this small street. Now at the back it's just a bunch of light skirmishers, and they curiously decide to turn and countercharge these charging hoplites. Since both sides have no charge bonus, the charge is completely ineffective on both sides. Both sides just begin a simple melee, but over time I'm definitely going to win that because their forces have very low melee stats, so my hoplites will have a fun time hacking through them. Meanwhile, on the other street, my forces going around to the enemy's rear were slightly distracted by some enemy cavalry who decided to come out and attack me, but of course my guys are all spearmen, so in many ways I'm pretty glad to be fighting these enemy cavalry. This is simply a chance for me to get rid of them. So my spearmen will simply hack their way through these disparate units of cavalry, and the rest of them are going to start making contact with the enemy's infantry. Making contact with them from behind is going to start applying the attack from behind morale shock, and these guys will eventually now fall back because of their casualties they've already taken at the same time. You can see the front line's pretty bloody. Both sides have taken extreme casualties. I've actually lost half my men fighting here, and I've had to push in lighter forces to try and hold the enemy back. So they actually were doing quite well, but this attack from the rear will spook them so much that they'll abandon the fight even if they are winning and start getting out of there. You can see their cavalry are now doing the same, disappearing at light speed away from our town. Excellent news. Some bad news though is that some enemy cavalry who had routed and come back earlier attacked my hoplites who were attacking the enemy in the rear, meaning that my hoplites are now being attacked in the rear. I needed to bring some of these spearmen back to attack those cavalry to get rid of them, because they should be able to do moderate damage to my guys attacking them in the back like that, especially if my guys are in a phalanx formation, which gives them extra weakness against flank attacks. So eventually I get these light Gallic forces to go in. So they're going to attack in the rear, the forces that are attacking me in the rear, who are attacking the enemy in the rear. It's some rear attackception, and it should go in my favour as these levies destroy the cavalry and leave the hoplites to do their work against the enemy's infantry. The enemy's infantry, of course, are also in a hoplite phalanx, and it's proving pretty hard to get through them, at least at this end of the street. At the other end, I'm almost out of missiles. I had a few left in my slinger regiment, so I rushed them into an ideal position to sling all the way along the street, hitting many regiments at once, and a single volley suddenly chain routs all of them when they take the small morale penalty for being under missile fire. So excellent news. The enemy are now going to rout right through our forces at both ends of the street, and are of course going to get themselves defeated in the process. So it's going to start degrading into the general mosh pit-like situation, where both sides just crush against each other, and the enemy are trying to escape. My guys are simultaneously trying to celebrate and occasionally attempt to kill the enemy as they walk past. It didn't turn into quite the mosh we've seen before in this situation, but still a pretty chaotic looking and generally glitchy situation as all of the units just crunch together here. My light forces pushed in there as well, just to make things extra glitchy. So, a short time later I got bored of killing the enemy, quit the battle, and it was declared a heroic victory for Eusebius' forces. We did take some pretty moderate losses among the hoplites fighting on the front line, but still we've kept the town and we'll soon have those guys back. The people of Genua still remember clearly the promises made by Master Xenon. They seem to think that their freedom was meant to be guaranteed in return for resisting the expansionist tribes from the Alps. Well, I don't know about that, but I can offer them a better deal. The protection of the most powerful city in this part of the world, the new Rome of the West, our sacred jewel, Massalia. Widening the reach of the Republic brings enhanced safety both to us and the people we now include. I must make the people of this town see that if they accept my terms, they will have a chance at true peace and true wealth, be it true or not. So let's have a little look at the battle results. You'll see here that we lost a few hundred men, the enemy losing over 2,000. You can see some of our heavy hoplite units have taken heavy casualties, as I mentioned, but still overall the situation looks good. The enemy have been pretty much wiped out and we're going to enslave them. Now curiously, because they attacked with a relatively small force, that leads me to believe that they don't really have anything else. It could be that the Confederation is on the edge of defeat, meaning I may be able to attack Mediolanum in the very near future. Definitely something to keep in mind. Now to reach the next turn, we have this dilemma situation to look at. Well, not quite a dilemma, but a problem to solve. It seems that Eusebius has managed to get himself an illegitimate child, and we have many options to pick from. We can adopt this child into Eusebius' family, which I believe may put him on the ruling council. We can pay this person to disappear by just losing money and hoping the issue goes away. We can make sure they disappear, which implies we're going to kill them, or we can just ignore them entirely. I wasn't really sure what the best option would be. I was quite confident I didn't want to adopt this random child, because I'm pretty sure that would cause some sort of scandal. So I was going to either kill them or pay them off to leave, because I think doing nothing would probably cause a scandal as well. I ended up just paying them off because killing them off seems like a bit of a risky option, especially if it's discovered. Paying them off is probably the quieter option, but we'll see what happens anyway. You can see the ruling council has lost some influence since we last checked in, but we're still pretty much dominating politics in Massalia. Eusebius and Carpos have tons of influence, but Gelon has so much influence and he's not on the council that that's reducing the council's overall power. You can see they also promoted Carpos to be Agoranimus, so now all of our officers are actually Agoranimus at once, and there's no penalty for doing that as far as I can see, so we've just got a bunch of bonuses as a result. Now you can see that the Gallic Confederation has lost out to the Celtiberian Confederation, meaning Massalia's northern, western and southern borders are now pretty safe, so this gives me even more leeway to go ahead with that plan to attack Mediolanum. We can see a few forces hanging around, just loads of generals basically, with no real army, but Mediolanum does have a massive garrison, so it's not going to be easy to take it, even with Eusebius' pretty powerful army. What I decided I would do was I would wait this turn to regenerate troops just to make him go back up to full strength. And by doing that, this gives me some time to get Gelon to come and help out as well. Since Massalia is so safe now, I don't really need Gelon to be hanging around Massalia itself, so he's going to go on a rare expedition out and come and help for the fight at Mediolanum. First, I'm going to just stop on the border to recruit a couple more troops. He has a very weird army, just has bits and pieces of different types of unit. It's not a very useful fighting force, but it's more useful as a reinforcement group to just bring in and filter these units in amongst Eusebios' men. I'm going to recruit a couple more guys on the way, and then next turn we should have the movement points needed to strike right at Mediolanum and take it with backup from Eusebios. So this is excellent news. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully the Carthaginians won't get involved and make things complicated. Now for Carpos, he's still being chased by those Athenians. I wanted to put him on double time to see if it could let him escape, but it was at this point I noticed that double time actually doesn't do anything in the Divide et Impera mod, so that's not going to help me at all. I just have to escape under regular speed. But the Athenians, of course, are in such a position that they can easily catch me in the position where I've stopped. Plus, to escape them, I have to go right past Athens, which could get awkward. I wanted to see if they would go in for peace to try and alleviate that threat, but no, they won't, and still no real reason for them being at war with us. And indeed, as we go into the next turn, that Athenian fleet does chase Carpos down. I managed to escape, however there's another Athenian fleet at the docks at Athens which comes out to meet him as he goes. So now Carpos is in some pretty serious trouble. As you can see, they have tons of boats who have marines on them. They have what looks like some sort of Scorpion or ballista ship, plus they have a massive numerical advantage, and Carpos' men are already slightly depleted. The balance bar doesn't appear to be lying in the situation. It's not going to be very easy to beat these guys. I decided that since I'm actually so terrible at naval battles, and that if I even attempted to do it myself, it would probably go even worse than the auto-resolve, I would just let the auto-resolve give me my fate. I go for the option which gives me a close defeat. Hopefully we took some of the enemy with us, but of course it still means Carpos was killed. We did kill a number of their marines, which is good for something at least, but now we're definitely going to have to take revenge on these Athenians. We'll see how things go in the next episode of Massalia Tales. In the ancient world, the power of rumour was more potent than that of real news. As Massalia later rests the final pieces of the multicultural invasion force she had faced, the world came to hear stories of her invulnerability. Suddenly the reputation of this city-state was such that the general atmosphere of hostility turned to one of fear or respect. From petty kingdoms to huge tribal coalitions, factions began making ties with the Massalians in a way never seen before. The exception to this was the Athenians, not wishing to go back on their proclamation of Massalia's crimes. They killed the noble Massalian diplomat Carpos and prepared for war.